Here we are again today at the Skimmer Ranch in the third map of the expansion to do a spotlight on one of the new creatures we can ride. This time it's the third mount of the expansion, the aforementioned Skimmer. And the Skimmer to me is my absolute favorite mount that they've put in the game for core tier exploration. This thing is phenomenal. It's not as fast as the Raptor, it can't go as high as the Springer, but in terms of quality of life of movement, this thing is unparalleled. It kind of has two specific purposes. As you'll notice, it hovers. So the first of those purposes is to allow us to travel across terrain we otherwise would struggle with, like quicksand, like noxious gases, like electrified landscapes that you'd experience in the brand. But also, it allows us to move very fast over water. And this is where it's very fun in terms of core tier. All those places we once upon a time had to slow down and start swimming, potentially be attacked by crate, maybe we don't like underwater combat very much, you can sort of bypass now. Even in Living World Season 3, they added this map here, Draconis Mons, which you guys may recall, with a burning, boiling sea that you can now just skip over, and that can assist you in your exploration somewhat. So that's the first main perk of this mount. I really do like the quality of life that this offers. I think that if you're looking for an easy time just auto-moving around instead of having to jump and stuff all the time and continuously execute your special action key, this is the main choice. It also has the advantage of being the biggest mount, so the dye job you choose for it will come through more, and I guess you can look cooler among everyone else. There is another perk as well to this mount, and it kind of hits another area of design space, and that's of gliding. So if you buy the Path of Fire expansion, you don't get access to the old Masteries that came with the Jungle expansion, Heart of Thorns. And in the jungle is where we learned to glide. So potentially, there's a lot of Path of Fire players out there who can't meaningfully glide from place to place to place because they don't have that mastery. The Skimmer kind of fills that role. You could take a Skimmer to a very high up place, such as this, and very comfortably leap and fly gracefully down. There is not just diminished fall damage on the Skimmer, there is no fall damage on the Skimmer. As long as you're on this thing, you will be fine. Now, remember, you cannot mount while in the middle of a fall, so you need to make sure before you start falling to your death that you want to be on the Skimmer first. So you can still potentially be caught unawares and fall to your death. But as long as you're on this already, as long as it's got its health and it hasn't died, you'll be fine. I also think this guy's a little bit tankier than the Raptor, but a little bit less on the vitality front than the Springer, which we looked at previously. So that's the purpose of the Skimmer. This beautiful, alien, mysterious-looking creature. It's got a beautiful idle animation where it pulls its tail up and pokes us on the back on one of our shoulders, and our character will turn around wondering, oh, what happened there? The attention to detail that's gone into this one specifically beyond all others, I really love. The waviness of its fins as it glides around. I'm always enjoying myself as I watch it. There you go. That was the idle right there. So I've shown you what it's like to move around on it. Let's show very briefly what the dismount animation is like. Pretty simple. Mounting is quite beautiful, as you'll see here. It rockets up from underneath us, and we're ready to glide, and we go moving on. There's a little bit of camera roll on this, which is quite obvious if you hold your camera in the right way. If you use action cam in Guild Wars 2, you'll notice camera roll a lot more. It's harder to show for other players, but if I look here, and I move, and then I stop moving, you'll actually see you get a little bit of camera roll. It shakes left to right a little bit. I wonder whether this was more extreme at some point in development, and then the devs sort of curved it down as people were feeling motion sick. This doesn't personally make me feel motion sick, but very little things do. But yeah, it's a nice little touch that you'll see a lot if you ride around in this game on action cam, if you go for that more action RPG experience rather than a clicky-based MMO that a lot of us are currently on. So that's that form of movement. There is also walking as well, which is the least interesting probably for the Skimmer. It does change its gait a little. You'll notice we're a bit bouncier now as we move around. So they have gone to the effort of giving it kind of a more interesting walk, but there's not too much to see. Another thing about the movement as well, beyond all of this, the other mounts we'd already be done talking about this, but if you're moving over sand, if you're moving over rock, if you're moving over grass, any kind of solid ground, you have a certain speed, a certain capability to turn and to bank. But if you are instead over waterways, and the map where you acquire this ranch we're at has a lot of them, if you're over water, you actually get a significant movement speed buff. You'll notice we're going even faster now, and the friction, as the devs have described it, is actually diminished, so you will move a little bit slower Sorry, you'll turn a bit slower. There'll be a bit more delay on there. And that's really one of the great things that this MMO's done with its mounts in terms of really like changing the way each one feels. It's something very hard to describe. Before the game came out, I'd seen a lot of Skimmer people playing on Skimmers. But until I really got my hands on it, I didn't quite have the right impression. And I can probably imagine a lot of people in that same situation watching this precise video. So acquisition is very simple once again. You arrive at the ranch. Again, it's very quick. If the expansion starts here, all you have to do is just move along here and straight on through to the ranch, which is down here. Once again, we can collect things, but this time what we're actually hoping to do as a part of the heart is to help other lost skimmers get back to the ranch. And there are also wounded people in the area, which relates to the special combat ability that this guy has, which is one of the more interesting ones. Speaking of the movement ability, which I've not even shown you yet, this is all just default movement. It's basically just a higher glide. So it's not too fascinating. But for example, let's say I want to glide out of this water here. Well, if I just run into this cliff, I'm just going to butt my head. It's not going to quite work. However, if I hold down the space bar, and you'll notice we have one large segment, just like the Springer had. If I hold down the space bar, we can hop our way up. The longer I hold it, the higher I will rise. And it's immediate. It's not like a charge up like the Springer has. This just immediately happens. So if you watch, I can raise to this peak, and for as long as I hold the space bar, I can hold that height for a certain duration of time before dropping back down when my endurance runs out. The Mastery, as all the others, improves the effectiveness of this and changes how high you can go. So this is maintained height. And you'll notice now that the ranch, all these kind of curious flat-topped pyramids, you can see how the movement ability affects stuff like this. And you can also see how this approximates gliding for people who don't have Heart of Thorns. It doesn't allow you to use updrafts as gliding would. It doesn't allow you to use ley lines as gliding would or any of that other stuff. You can't use like special ley line abilities in certain environments like gliding did. But you do at least get something that's a little bit similar to it. And if you're scared of heights, and if you just want a really smooth, easy time playing the game, well, then this is your go-to. So here I'm actually over some terrain that would be doing a lot of damage to me, but because I'm on the Skimmer, I can move safely over it. And that is a huge mechanic in the third map of the expansion, so you're definitely going to want one of these. So let's talk a little bit about the combat ability then. So you'll notice it here. It's called Barrel Roll. And the main thing about Barrel Roll is, yes, it does some damage. Yes, it inherits things from other mounts, obviously. But Barrel Roll, you just saw a player did that there over to this villager. It actually revives NPCs and your allies. So at the ranch where you originally get the Skimmer, they're trying to teach you about these mechanics, and they've littered around several wounded NPCs you can try a Barrel Roll out on. Unfortunately, another player just rezzed one before I could get to it. So over here, for example, oh no, he's fine. Over here, there's an injured villager, right? And if I barrel roll over him...
Thank the gods you came along. The pull of the quicksand was too strong.
We can actually save this guy's life. We can help him out, and we can get progress on our heart there. That works on players too. So if you like the idea of playing quite a supporty playstyle, and you're thinking about a big fight's about to break out in the world, and you want to see how you want to engage on it, riding in on the Raptor would allow you to pull all the enemies together and be quite aggressive. Riding in on the Springer is also quite aggressive. But if you choose to ride in and use this to open combat, you can actually heal your friends up who might be struggling from a fight that was already in progress. And so that's the idea behind this one. It does also obviously dismount you, so you want to pay attention to that. And it does a bit of damage. But the main thing is healing people and reviving them. The fourth mount as well has kind of a supporty thing, which we'll get into very shortly. So there you go. That's its capabilities. Let's have a little bit of a look at the Masteries, as always. So we start off with Nimble Recovery, which is that we now get swiftness and protection if we ever get knocked off. Now, I haven't shown you that, but when a mount's health goes to 0, we'll now get knocked off, and we'll actually be supported a little bit. We'll be able to move faster, and we'll be defended somewhat. And also, if we use the barrel roll now to attack something and actually start a fight, so I'll use it on this Hadhava here. If you watch my boons, I'll actually gain 2 boons immediately. I'm not sure if it shares those to my allies. That would be quite interesting. I immediately interrupted me. Feels like every time I try and use a high power cooldown on this class, I get interrupted. I'm not sure whether that shares it to our allies as well, but what this means is even though we've been knocked off of the Skimmer, we still get that quality of life of being able to move a little bit faster. Rejuvenating Revival, which is that we can now heal downed allies when we pass through them with a barrel roll, as I've shown. We get Ride the Wind, which increases our hover to be much higher, as I've also shown. And finally, Nimble Benevolence, which shares out the Nimble Recovery to all the other mounts. So all of our engages now have that added perk on there. So with the Masteries done, there is, of course, dies to show off. If there was any mount that I wanted 2 dye channels on, it was probably this one. So right now you're looking at a quite gorgeous black dye. But my favorite actually has been a version of red. I like Imperial Red a hell of a lot on this. So as you can see here, look at how distinct that red is. Look at how much that changes things. Absolutely phenomenal. And all of them are really striking. This is my favorite dye this is my favorite mount to dye as well, I must be honest. Here's Crisp Mint. That one blends in a bit better. Here's White, as I've shown off many times before. And what's a color I haven't really shown on any of these showcases just yet? I don't know, like orange. Let's go with an amber dye. So there you go. You can see that right there. So yeah, that is the Skimmer. You've seen his idols. Now, in terms of like a review, having played with this a lot now that I've got it maxed out, I am curious how this competes play-wise with the 5th mount, the hidden mount, which there'll be a video on coming up very soon, the Griffin. But that aside, I do think this has a very real place. I think most veterans of Guild Wars 2 won't appreciate how profound and strong this is just because they're used to gliding. For a lot of us, if we've been playing tons of this game, 2 years ago, we got used to the idea of full damage going away. 2 years ago, we were able to glide and cover all these distances. And so the novelty of getting that on this guy is not so strong. But for anyone who's just come into Guild Wars 2, anyone who's spent a lot of their time in, you know, the core areas of the game before they hit level 80, before they arrive at the desert, this is going to be a really rewarding guy to get. It's also probably one of the strictest mounts that you need, especially when considering some of the more southern regions, like the Desolation here with the Sulphurous Wastes, where you just cannot get around comfortably without it. For all of those reasons, I found myself using it a lot. Maybe not quite as much as the Springer and the Raptor 2, but certainly enough. And he's got such a brilliant design. Probably overall one of my favorites right now. So there you go, guys. That is the Skimmer. And I'll be back for the next mount, the last official marketed mount of the game, the Jackal, which is truly phenomenal.